Okay, so first I'm gonna go through essences. I don't have all the essences and I haven't been able to try them all out. But what I would do, I would mainly play 2 different builds. This would probably be my standard build where I have conflict in the major slot. And then Lucid Dream, assuming everything is rank 3. Lucid Dream in the minor, and then in the third one I would probably go with the Raid Essence. It's important that it's rank 3 though. This bangs a lot. But then I think you can sometimes go Crucible of Flame in this spot as well, but conflict is extremely strong for DKs because versatility is so good for you as well. So that's the main build I would go. I know some people go with the Vision of Perfection too, but I'm not a fan. And then talents. We're moving on to talents instantly. It's very much the same most of the time. So I know some people go Clawing Shadows when they can't reach their targets or whatever. I never go Clawing Shadows. I don't think it's good. I think it's a meme talent now. You can always reach your target somewhat. You have so many ranged abilities. You have so much stuff you can do when you can't reach someone. And then you have, just because of how DKs work, you can always catch up to people. Because Chains of Ice is the strongest slow in the game, 70%, and you can always reapply it. It's really easy to keep up. And then also, you have Death's Advance. And the passive here says you cannot be slowed below 70% of normal speed. So eventually you always catch up with your target. And you have a lot of ranged abilities. So I don't like Clawing Shadows at all from what I've tested. And then you always go Ebon Fever in PvP. It's just better. I don't ever play with this other stuff either. And then here, same. I always play Asphyxiate. I've never changed that. It's just better overall. Here as well, I always go Soul Reaper. I've never spec'd into these other ones. I don't think it's good. Soul Reaper is just super nice for the... it's not the damage so much, but the fact that it generates 2 runes. That's what you care about the most. So you use it to generate runes, basically. That's like the main use of it. Here on this talent tree, there is a lot of changing. So Spell Eater is very good against a lot of things. Like mainly casters, of course, because it makes your AMS really strong. It's super important against casters to have this, but also stuff like Ret Paladins. Pika is not going to like that I'm saying this, but this is extremely strong against Ret Paladins. You just pair it up with Wings, and you'll farm Pika every time. And then Wraith Walk. You go Wraith Walk basically when you feel like you don't need Spell Eater. I'm talking about a 2v2 perspective mainly, because in 3v3 you'll probably pick Death Pact more often. The reason you don't pick Death Pact as often in 2s is because of dampening. So when it's far into the game, this thing will actually do the opposite of helping you when it's really deep dampening. It's kind of scary to use in 2v2 because of dampening starting instantly, and there's like higher dampening more often. So I don't like using this in 2s too often unless I'm against like double DPS. Then it's good because it's going to be a short game and it won't be really high dampening. So most of the time I pick these 2, but in 3s I'll probably pick Death Pact a little bit more often. Just depends on like if you need extra mobility, if you can get a lot of value out of Spell Eater, or you know, if you want some more survivability against Melee Cleave or something. But I usually pick Wraith Walk. And then here, this is a pretty big deal actually. So all these talents are kind of useless, but Epidemic has one really overpowered use that I probably shouldn't share because it's really annoying that it's still like that, and they should have fixed it, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Maybe they'll fix it faster, who knows? It's been like this forever. Basically, if you have a plague on someone and they go to drink, you just press Epidemic and you will stop their drink regardless. If they are behind a pillar at the other side of the map, it doesn't matter. You just press Epidemic and it will stop their drink as long as the plague is up on them. But yeah, these 2, Defile and Pestilence, they basically do almost nothing. So you just go Epidemic for those drink things, especially now that the drink meta is very real, especially in 3v3. Drinking is very important in a lot of matchups, so having this can win you games. So you pretty much always go Epidemic. And then on the last part here, you go Unholy Frenzy every single game. It's extremely strong. I have seen some people play with Army of the Damned. I personally don't like it at all. I think Unholy Frenzy is really nice. And it's not just that it gives you haste, but every time you auto attack, you get up Festering Wound. So it's just super strong, and it's really low cooldown as well, 1.3 minutes. So as a DK, you often just press your cooldowns instantly as they come up. and you just increase your sustain, and Unholy Frenzy is just overall super strong. So PvP talents, I'm human, so I usually go Relentless, but sometimes I go Trinket, it depends. Like against Warriors, for example, Trinket is really good, so you can Trinket the Fair still if you need to, if you're not playing Lichborn. But most of the time I go Relentless just because I have a Trinket here anyway, and I have IBF. So you have 2 Trinkets, and then all the other CC is reduced, so I just like going Rally overall as human. But if I wasn't human, I'd probably go Trinket a little bit more often. Rally is really good though, overall. I don't almost never go Adept. There's very few situations where Adept is good, although they probably do exist, especially in 2v2. PvP talents, there is a lot of things you can do. So the thing is, when you go Conflict, which you go almost every game, like most games, it also gives you Necrotic Strike because it is a major. And that means you get an extra PvP talent, which is really nice. Because then you don't have to spec into Necrotic, you just get it from your Essence. And that's a big reason as well as why you spec into that Essence a lot. So what I usually play with, I always play A-Bomb. Even though I got nerfed recently, it's really strong. And then I pretty much always play Necrotic Aura. And then there's a lot of things you can do with the third one. You can sometimes spec out of Necrotic Aura though, but we want to try and always have A-Bomb. So A-Bomb is like locked in pretty much every game. And then you can swap these two, but I try to keep Necrotic because it's a lot of damage. 8% increased magical damage. So Dark Sim is obviously really good against some things, like for example Holy Priest. This is extremely strong because you can steal the greater heals, and Fire Mages, you can steal the greater Pyros. Stuff like that is really strong. Or just a lot of matchup in general, like against Mages you can steal Polymorphs and then poly their healer, or Warlocks you can steal their Fair, stuff like that. But it's not always worth it. You gotta like try it out, see depending on your comp you're playing and what you're playing against, if you feel like you need Dark Sim. It can be really annoying for the enemy team to deal with. Anti-Magic Zone is pretty much always the pick here if you're playing against a Spell Cleave in 3s or a caster in 2s. You can often pick it as well, but a lot of the time in 2s I'll skip Anti-Magic Zone even if I'm facing a caster, unless it's like a mage, because you can pair it up with Combust. But a lot of the time I'll just skip it to just be able to do more damage. Like against Ellies, I'd probably rather have Lichborn. I know some people play with reanimation. I'm not a fan personally. It just adds like this randomness to the game. It just summons, you can, instead of pressing Necrotic Strike, you can just summon zombies that stun people and they do a lot of damage. It can be really good sometimes, but personally I hate it. I think it's really a silly spec. But I'm sure it has its uses. I've seen some people play with it and do pretty well with it. But yeah, I don't like it. And then I never play with this. I pretty much never play with Life and Death. I've tried it out. I've tried this against Holy Paladins, and I feel like maybe it has some potential, but I haven't been testing it enough to say for sure. But I feel like it's decent. Decomposing can also be decent. I've seen some people play with Necromancer's Bargain as well. I can't really say for sure like when you pick between these. I don't really know when you go Decomposing Aura and when you go Necromancer's Bargain. I think you just have to try it out and see what you like more. I very rarely spec into this stuff. If I play 3v3, I'll go Transfusion. I'll go like this. If I'm getting targeted a lot, Transfusion for healing myself. Or I'll sometimes go Lichborn, like against Elise. This can be really good, so you get out of more stuns. There's actually a lot of PvP talents you can swap up. So try it out, sure, and see if you like it. But personally, I like Transfusion if I'm getting targeted. Lichborn if I feel like I want to get out of more stuns. And then I have a cancel Lichborn macro too, because it makes you move slower. So if you just want to get out of the stun and then move fast, you can just cancel it right away. That's usually what I swap between. I'll swap between Zone, Transfusion, Lichborn, and then sometimes Dark Sim. That's usually what I do. But the other talents can have some uses. Okay, so I'm just gonna move on to gear. So the first thing I want to mention with gear is just like Warrior and any other two-handed class, you need Cut of Skill. You need this weapon. I don't think, honestly, it's such a big deal that if I ever played DK without this weapon, I would be not having fun because I'd be knowing how much damage I'm losing out on. This is a huge thing to get, and I think you need to kind of farm this right away. if you're planning on playing arena. It's really overpowered. So everyone needs to get this. Even if I had like a 450 weapon with a socket, I would really have a hard time replacing Cut of Death. That's how overpowered it is. So there is some PvE gear that is really broken. There is also some trinkets that are really overpowered. It's these lingering spore pods and bloodthirsty urchin. These two trinkets are for warriors and DKs and rets. They seem to be really overpowered defensively. It makes you way more tanky. Not a fan of that. I don't like those kind of trinkets, but I'm just telling you what's the best right now. But if you want to do more damage, you can play Maledic if you want to do setups. If you have Maledic, like your partner has a Maledic as well, Maledic is really good. But personally, I'm playing with the badge and the insignia right now, and it feels really good, more sustained damage. You can also use the pocket size weapon from trinket from Mechagon. There's a lot of trinkets you can use. Also, Safeguard is really good, especially in 3v3. This is a really overpowered trinket. I wouldn't use it in 2v2 as much because it's affected by dampening, so the absorb isn't as good. But this is definitely something you use very often in 3v3. You gotta test them out. There is a lot of trinkets in the game. You can just, if you get a new trinket from a raid or a Mythic Plus or whatever, you can just test them out, see if you feel like it does good damage by looking at your details. But those are the trinkets I know are overpowered. I think this is the best those PvE trinkets, sadly, because I don't like that defensive stuff, but it's the best, so it is what it is. So I think that's the main thing with gear. And then when you look for stats, what you want to go for is haste and versatility. That's basically how it goes. So the way I do it with gear, like a general rule, is I care way more about the stats than the item level. So this, for example, this waist is perfect. It has haste, versatility, and a socket. I wouldn't, if I got a 440 waist with worse stats, I wouldn't put it on. Well, this is a socket as well, so it's kind of extreme. Let's use this instead. If I got 450 gloves, I would probably not use them if they had the wrong stats. But if it was 455, it was like 15 item levels higher, I would probably use them. Around the 15 item level higher mark, I will probably be okay with replacing one good stat for one bad, because it's so much item level. It's a little bit different in PvE because there is some hidden scaling in PvP that we don't know how it works exactly. But like, that's like the general rule I go by. I'm not saying it's 100% the best way to do it, but that's kind of how I do it, and I know a lot of other top players that kind of think about it that way. But that's the main thing. You just want to get as much haste and versa as possible. And remember that versa is actually, haste will make you do more damage, but versa is really nice because you get more tanky. And also your trinkets are not these trinkets, but if you get some PvE trinkets like this, these effects will be more, they will be stronger the more versatility you have. All right, so that covers stats. Traits. What you want to do with traits, I don't have a single one of them because I've gotten unlucky. I've put on this 390 to show it, but Magus is what you want to get. You want to get triple Magus of the Dead. This is like a dream scenario. I would say triples Magus of the Dead and triple Festermite, or maybe throw in 1 Cankerous Wounds and 2 Festermites. So main thing you want is the Magus. That's the best one. Second best Festermite, and then I would say Cankerous third, and then Hell Change is okay as well. I think after that, Harrowing Decay, but you don't really want that. Yeah, that's the thing with traits. And then when it comes to tier 2 traits, I mean, you don't make your decision based on the tier 2 traits, but it's nice to know that Overwhelming is the best tier 2 trait. So if you can get that, that's super nice. Overwhelming is a super nice trait. I would say like Earthlink or Unstable or Elemental World or something is probably the second best, but you really want Overwhelming. This is what you're aiming for. This is like Poke Champ. So if you can get that there, that's Biz. And then for the last trait, also not the main decision, you pick a piece, but I think having a Cold Heart is really nice because it reduces the cooldown on Icebound as well as heal you a little bit extra, but it's the cooldown you mainly care about. You don't want to stack these because percentage stuff and stuff that reduces cooldown doesn't stack. You can only have one of them. I mean, you can have more, but the only thing another Cold Hearted would do is heal more. It wouldn't reduce the cooldown even more. Same with percentage stuff. It doesn't increase the percentage even more. And I also like March of the Damned a lot because it reduces the cooldown of your Death's Advance. So if you get those two, that's super nice. And then for the third slot, you can just throw in Impassive Visage or Resounding Protection Resounding Protection is probably the better one if you could pick. Then we are gonna move on to the basic rotation as a Death Knight. So the basic way of playing, let's just get right into it, is it's not as hard as it looks. I mean, some people meme about DK being really easy, but it's not that easy to do damage, but I don't know, it's like middle somewhere, I would say, on difficulty. If you add in pet management, I would say it's like middle to high difficulty compared to other classes. So what you want to do is, first, I really wanna mention Chains of Ice. It obviously doesn't do any damage, but this is the most overpowered button you have as a DK. Often the difference between a good and a very good DK is how much they abuse Chains of Ice. Because DKs that are less experienced and less good, they won't know how important it is to keep this up constantly on often not just one target, but often you want to make sure it's on the other target too. It depends on the situation, but DKs that are too greedy with their damage and they don't reapply Chains of Ice are usually the ones that, you know, don't do as well. Chains of Ice is super overpowered, is what I'm trying to say. It's a 70% slow, so it's better than all the other slows except some mage slows, right? Crippling and hamstring and all that stuff is 50%. So your slow is just by default better. And like I mentioned before, you also have the passive on Death's Advance. You cannot be slowed below 70%. So when you just keep chains up, you'll get to them eventually. It's really strong button. But the way you do damage is you just apply your Outbreak, and then that keeps your disease up, and it spreads to everyone nearby for the Outbreak duration. But when the Outbreak is over, it won't spread anymore. But getting that disease up, and then the next thing you do is you proc your Cut of Death. I mean your Cut of Skill, like I just did. You just keep your disease up, your Violent Plague, and then you get your Festering Wound up. And when you're Festering up, that means now I can press Necrotic 5 times, but Necrotic costs 1 rune. And then you want to use Death Coils to empty your bar here as well. So I reapply my disease, use Necrotic. I'm getting high on runic power, so I use a Death Coil in between. And now I see I need more Festering, so I use Festering, Death Coil. You kind of just play as efficient as you can, right? Now I gotta reapply that disease. I'm gonna get some more Festering. Now I'm gonna Death Coil. It's just like, it's all about rotating that and playing as efficient as you can with your runic power and your runes. It's pretty straightforward, but it takes a little while to master it in Arena when there's a lot of things going on. But that's basically what it's all about. Keeping up those two, using Necrotics on it, and Death Coiling. One thing that's really important about Death Coiling is that it gives you Runic Corruption. So it'll often, in some situation, it'll be better to just spam Necrotics even if you have full Runic power, just because it'll be more bursty in the moment. But overall, it's really important to get your Death Coils in between, because it gives you Runic power, which increases your rune regeneration by 100% for 3 seconds. That only procs from Death Coil or when you Death Strike. Death Strike is the heal. Real quick, I should talk about Death Strike as well. It's instead of using Death Coil. So Death Coil will always be more damage, and it reduces the cooldown of your Dark Transform. Which is the buff on the pet, which also equals to more damage and more kicks. So it's really good. But Death Strike is a really overpowered heal as well, especially when you use it correctly. So every time you take a big chunk of damage, your Death Strike will heal more. You shouldn't just press it randomly. You should try and press it right after you take a lot of damage, because then you will heal depending on how much damage you just took. So for example, if you eat a Chaos Bolt from a Destro Warlock and then you Death Strike right after, it'll heal for a shit ton. Or a Greater Pyro from a Mage, Death Strike right after, it'll heal for a shit ton. It's a really overpowered heal against a lot of things. Like you're playing against Rogue Mage as well, and they burst you down, and then you come out and then you Death Strike, and it'll heal you for a lot more than it would normally, just because you took a lot of burst. I'm gonna talk about pets as well, but I feel like I covered like the basic there. Get the Disease up, get your Festering up, and then you just rotate between Necrotic and using your Death Coil to empty this bar. And then you keep your Chains of Ice up, of course, as well when you're in Arena. So a lot of the time when you pop cooldowns as a DK, you want to pop it all at the same time. and often it's really good to just pop your cooldowns really early in the game, just because they'll be back faster. Like, you are such a powerhouse when your cooldowns are up, and they're up for a pretty long time. You just want to get it out so you can get it, so you can do it again faster in the game. You don't have to think a lot about when to use your cooldowns as a DK. It's almost always good to just get it out there right away, especially in 2v2. In 3v3 you might want to have to think a little bit more, but most of the time I'd say you just go for it pretty early on in the game. But yeah, Soul Reaper is not a part of you popping your cooldowns. You can use it a little bit outside of your cooldowns, but sometimes when you're popping cooldowns too. But basically this is just, the main thing you think about is that it generates 2 runes, right? So whenever I've been doing a lot of damage, you'll eventually run out of runes. Reapply my disease, get my festering up. Like now I'm running out of runes, right? And then I can do Soul Reaper and I'm gaining more runes again, and you can keep going. So you just use it to get runes in the moment. So that's like, you don't consider that a part of you popping your cooldowns. That's a part of just generating runes whenever it's good to do it. It's situational. But when you pop your cooldowns, it's also a little bit situational how you want to do it. But the first thing you want to do when I go into a fight is I want to get my slow up, I want to get my disease up, and I get some festering. Maybe get like, I think it's minimum 4. You want to get minimum 4 here before you pop. 4 to 6. And then you pop your haste. And then you pop your apocalypse, A-bomb. And then you can buff your pet as well if you want to. And now all your cooldowns are out. And you just keep doing the standard rotation. You spam necrotics, use some death coils in between, and make sure the diseases are up. And you're doing absolutely crazy damage right now. Keep the slow up as well. Try and make it so the enemy is running into your A-bomb. This would be like, if someone stood like this, ate my A-bomb, ate my pet damage, let me like PV into them, it's almost unhealable damage. It's really, really crazy how much damage you're doing when you pop your cooldowns like that and they're tanking your A-bomb. But the higher rating you are, the more people know that, and they run from the DK cooldowns. That's what people will often do. They will run from your A-bomb, they will CC or kill your A-bomb, and they will just like try and do nothing while your cooldowns are up, because it's really scary. But if you do it at the right times, there's not much they can do about it. Like gripping them in and stunning them with a fix and popping every cooldown on top of them, they're going to eat some damage. There's nothing they can do about that. So I guess I'll mention real quick pet management as well. The main thing you need some pet macros. So you need one /pet attack macro to send your pet in. I have that on scroll mouse wheel up. I think that's really nice. And then scroll mouse wheel down is putting it on passive. So that's just the default pet things, right? You send them in and you send them back. I don't think you should have this macro where your pet attacks whatever you're attacking. Like /pet attack in your festering and necrotic is bad. And this is why it's bad, because a lot of the time you want to send your pet somewhere else. For example, if this guy is a healer, I will send my pet after him to hit him so he doesn't get healed. I mean, so he can't drink. You will often send your pet somewhere else to stop drinks. That's a very important thing to do, especially in 2v2. Actually, in 3v3 it happens a lot too. You just send your pet in there on the healer. And also, you need to have a pet move to macro. So I have that on middle mouse. So basically, what I'll do is I go in and I'm doing damage, right? And maybe I've used my mind freeze already. Maybe he faked me, maybe I landed it. And now I know that I want to do another kick soon. So you got to prepare for that. And this is hard to do in the moment. But basically, what you do is you buff your pet. Your pet cannot kick anyone until it's buffed. It won't interrupt the cast. So you buff your pet, and then you send your pet a little bit away. It needs to be like 5 yards away, right? So I send them over here, and I let them just stand here until they cast something, and then I press pet kick on him. I only have arena macros for it, so I can't show you right now, but I have arena pet kick 1, 2, and 3. So when you do that, you send them over here, and then I spam arena kick on this guy, and he charges over, and he stops the cast. And that's kind of hard to do in the moment. But you should definitely start practicing that right away, the pet management. That is very important to do as a DK. And a lot of DKs don't do that. They just go in and they never use their kick. You need to do that. What you should do as a general rule is always use your normal mind freeze first if you're kicking the target you're on. Because they're going to be faking anyway when they see you have mind freeze. But most people don't think about the pet kick. Even at high rating, they will just eat it because it's not a long interrupt. So they don't see it. It's not really worth to fake most of the time. They just get kicked because it's a really short kick. But it can be very, very good. So you just mind freeze. and then send your pet over here, buff it, and then you send your pet in to kick. Also, another thing is when your pet is buffed, you have a stun as well. Gnaw, this stun right here. It is a longer duration stun when your pet is buffed. So that's something to keep in mind. It's a 2-second stun and 1 second when he's not buffed. Don't overthink that too much though, but it's something to keep in mind. I also want to mention real quick with Raise Abomination. You can use this to get people out of stealth. So if the game just started, you can rush in and you can try and defenicate them out. And if you don't get them, you can A-bomb somewhere else, like over here. And if they're stealthed around this area, he will break them out. So on short maps, you can just rush in, defenicate one side, A-bomb the other side, you'll probably get the rogue out.